All right, so starting back up again on the 7 habits of highly effective people, we stopped off at habit 3, and now we're moving on to habit 4. So, habits 1 through 3 are considered the personal habits. Um, but now, with habits 4 through 6, um, those are considered more interpersonal habits. So, habits between yourself and other people. So, the first habit, or habit number 4, is that we should think win win. So, what does thinking win win mean as opposed to other things? Um, so you can think of every social interaction, so every relationship you have, um, as something that you either gain from or you lose from, right? You either you either have a positive interaction with that person or you have a negative interaction with that person. And that person, they have either a positive or a negative interaction as well, right? Um, so that's what we mean. That's what we mean when we talk about winning is is having a positive interaction, and losing is having a negative interaction, right? So here we have this diagram. So if you get what you want and they get what they want, then it's win-win, right? You both won the interaction. That's not to say that these interactions are a game necessarily, right? But to say that and everything that happens to us has some effect on us, and that effect can be good or bad. It can be neutral too, right? But on a scale, the scale is from good to bad. Um, so interactions could be good for me and good for you. Um, that would be a win-win. Now, is there such thing as a lose-lose? Yeah. So if it's bad for me and bad for you, then it's a lose-lose, right? There also can be win-lose situations where it's good for one of us but bad for the other. So it could be good for me, bad for you, or it could be good for you, bad for me. Um, so what are some examples here? So an example might be an example of lose-lose, let's say. What's a good example? So we have something like where I hate you and you hate me, right? That's a lose-lose. Both of us hate each other. Those are negative feelings. It's bad for everybody. You could have something like revenge, right? Where somebody does a bad thing to you and you do a bad thing to them in return. You could also have um, you could also have something that really just doesn't benefit anybody. So like um, if let's say I buy something and it turns out that the thing I bought, I don't like it, and the person who I bought it from, they feel like they didn't get enough money for it. So I traded not enough money from their perspective, and I got something that was not good from my perspective. And that seems like a lose-lose trade. Like nobody really feels like they benefited from the trade. Maybe it would have been better if somebody else bought the thing, and maybe even at a higher price, perhaps. Um, so that would be a lose-lose trade. What about win-lose? So win-lose scenarios can happen. Obvious examples include things like sports, right? Um, if I have a if I have a sports game where there's a score and somebody wins and somebody loses, that's win lose by definition. Like somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. unless it's a draw, but draws usually get resolved by like a tie breaking point or something, right? So those are win-lose situations by design, right? Those have been designed to be competitive. There are also zero-sum games. What's a zero-sum game? It's a game where where uh, there's finite winnings. So like uh, an example of a zero-sum game might be something like poker, um, where there's only so much in the pot, right? It starts off. We start off the game. Everybody puts money in the pot. There's only so much money in the pot, so we could redistribute that money back out to everybody, and everybody would get their money back, or we could give all the money to one person, and then the rest of us don't have money. That's a zero sum game, and because the winnings are finite, there's only so much of them. Um, Basically, everybody can't get more than what we started with, right? Um, and that's with a lot of things. So like, if I spend time with you, I can't spend time with another person or something like that. Like I only have so much of certain finite things. So time's one of them. Money might be one of them. Um, like food might be one of them, right? If you take the last cookie in the cookie jar, that means somebody else didn't get to have it. So that's a win-lose. Um, in the context of like a school environment, uh, there are win-lose situations like who gets admitted to the school. There's only so many seats in a class, and um, not everybody can take that class. There's also only so many students allowed to enter the school per semester. So some people get admitted to the school, and some people get denied admission. So that's a win-lose situation. Also, if you take a certain test, like let's say you take um, the SAT, or you take the GRE, which is it's like the SAT for grad school. Um, when you take those tests, you are trying to make the best grade, and in that context, the best grade means that you would get everything right. But you're also trying to make a better grade than other people. So you're trying to get like in the 90th percentile or something like that, which means that you made a higher grade than 90% of the other people. That's a win-lose scenario because only 10% of people can be the top 10%. The rest of us have to be in the bottom 90%. Um, Everybody can't be above average, just by definition, right? So there are some types of scenarios that are going to be win-lose like that. But the goal, I mean, in an ideal world, we want to try to make as many things as possible win-win. So what are examples of win-win scenarios? A win-win scenario would be you buy something, um, and you're satisfied with the thing you bought, and the person that you bought it from, they're satisfied with the price. So you both feel like you got a good deal. Another scenario could be you make an A in the class, and somebody else makes an A in the class too. You both got A's. And the fact that you got an A doesn't mean that the other person couldn't get an A. You both could get A's at the same time because knowledge is not finite in that way. You can both know the same amount of stuff. So those are win-win scenarios. And why do we want win-win scenarios? Because nobody is going to lose. Um, the world would be better if everybody wins all the time. And so we ideally want to set up our lives in such a way that everybody can win. Um, so the worst case is lose lose. Nobody wants lose lose, right? That's bad for everybody. Some people can want win lose because they want to win. But that forces somebody else to lose, and so somebody is dissatisfied and another person is satisfied. Um, the ideal is if we can get as many situations as possible to be win-win, so that nobody feels dissatisfied about the situation, right? So that's a good way of being effective, is to make as many types of situations win-win as possible. All right, the next thing, habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. In other words, listen to people. So this is hard. This is a hard one because um, we all have, or most of us have, a voice in our head, um, thinking our thoughts, right? Um, and we want to express those thoughts to other people. We feel strongly about something. We think something's true, something's false, and we want to tell others about it. Now that's good because everybody in like in a win-win world, everybody gets to express themselves. But the trouble is that other people also want to express themselves at the same time, right? Um, so what what we often end up falling into is the trap of saying our piece, thinking that our piece is important, and then not really listening to what they have to say, the other person has to say. So we sort of say what we have to say, blurt it out, and then tune out. But that's bad. So if everybody speaks and nobody listens, then no communication's going on at all, right? Um, and it's tempting to do that because from our own perspective, our own thoughts feel like the most important thing in the world, right? Like our thoughts are screaming out to ourselves from the inside, like I'm important. Say me, say me. Tell them this is important, and that's basically we are not necessarily selfish, but we are self-centered because we can hear our thoughts, but we can't hear other people's thoughts. And so our thoughts are always going to feel like the most important thing. But that's the case for other people too. They also think that their thoughts are the most important thing. So what actually can make somebody like you and make you interpersonally effective, socially effective in scenarios, um, is to listen to them instead of talking. That's going to make the other person feel like you really think they're important. Um, and this is true. This is true for a lot of things. So I think this is true when you're trying to engage in a situation where you want something from somebody. Even if you want something from somebody, it would be good to listen to what they value first so that you can then frame what you want in terms of what they want, because it's going to be a lot easier for them to do what you want if it's consistent with what they want, right? So let's give an example, like um, when you are trying to convince somebody in politics, let's say. So in politics, you have your opinions and you want to express them, but the other person has their opinions, and if you don't let them express their opinions, they're going to resent you. So what you want is to let them express their opinions, agree with all that you can about their opinions, and then try to make your opinions work together, right? Um, Another example could be something like working on a group project, letting everybody speak and listening to each other. That might be a good first step in a group project. So another example might be something like going on a date, for example. If you want to impress your date, you might be tempted to talk all about yourself, but that's not going to necessarily impress your date. What would impress your date is if you really understood them. Um, and that would requires actually listening to them, right? Uh, and if everybody, so if you understand them first, then you're going to be in a better position to then express yourself because you're going to understand where they're coming from. You're going to be able to incorporate that into your own thoughts, and that's going to help you to express what you want understood. So, um, a good idea to listen first, basically. All right, and this next one, synergize. So synergize is a fancy word, um, but it's like business speak. Another word for it is essentially teamwork. We also have the word delegate. So um, the idea of synergizing essentially is trying to figure out everybody's strengths and everybody's weaknesses and then play according to their strengths and weaknesses. So um, if you have a group of people and somebody's um, good at one skill, somebody's good at another skill, somebody's good at another skill, you might organize the team. Uh, you might organize the team in accordance with those differences in skills. And that way, you can essentially have a type of comparative advantage. What do I mean by comparative advantage? So if you assign everybody the same thing, then you have not given uh, you haven't given people the tasks that they're good at. So your team work is going to suffer. Your productivity is going to suffer. But if you assign one person what they're good at and another person what they're good at, another person what they're good at, then everybody's going to be more efficient. The team as a whole is going to improve, right? Um, so that's the basic idea: is understanding people's strengths and weaknesses and playing with that, not playing against it. Um, and that then everybody wins, right? Because everybody gets to do what they're good at, and everybody gets to do it more efficiently. Um, and so delegating is basically just this concept. But if you happen to be a leader, then you delegate tasks to the people that will do them. That's what the delegating where the delegating comes in. So um, the last of the habits, habit number 7, they call it sharpen the saw. So that's a metaphor. Um, another way of expressing that metaphor, sharpen the saw, is lifelong learning. So if you think of your mind as like a saw, um, if you use a saw a bunch, it gets duller, right? So you want to sharpen the saw. The same with your mind. If you use your mind a lot, you want to occasionally sharpen your mind. And how do you sharpen your mind? Uh, by doing things like reading and by uh, practicing your skills, right? Um, it's not a perfect metaphor because I actually think a saw gets duller the more you use it. Your mind, I think, actually your mind gets better the more you use it. The more you practice something, the better you know it usually. So it's not exactly the right metaphor, um, but you see the point is that you want to keep doing the skills. You want to keep practicing the skills that um, that you want to maintain. So if one of those skills is um, maintaining knowledge in your work, you might have to occasionally brush up on, read some stuff from your work, to remember all of the stuff that you might have forgotten. So this is a skill to use, um, essentially after you're done with school and through your whole life, is that you're never exactly finished, right? Well, until you're dead. You're never finished learning. You're never finished improving. You always want to engage in some form of self improvement. And that usually involves trying to challenge yourself and practice these skills. So that's the 7 habits of highly effective people. Um, and I hope it's self explanatory how all of those habits can be used for personal betterment, and specifically betterment within the context of going to college for the first time and taking this class and trying to improve your performance as you go along in the semester.